Welcome back to our final segment of Civil Discourse Now for March 24th, 2012. I'm looking at the wrong camera. I'm Mark Small, co-host is Paul Ogden. Our guests are Gary Welsh and Matt Stone. We're talking about residence requirements for elective office and voting here in the state of Indiana in light particularly of the controversy over Senator Lugar's candidacy for U.S. Senate and re-election. And Paul, you were in the middle of some kind of drivel at the end of the last segment on Attorney General's opinions.
Well, I was talking about the Attorney General's opinions have gotten a lot of press. I've actually read those opinions, and I find some things that are noteworthy. First of all, they never address the federal constitutional qualifications provision at all. In fact, they never address federal law at all, I don't believe. They talk completely about state law, and the opinions are about his voting. They are not about his qualifications. But one thing I find particularly noteworthy, when you write an opinion like that, you lay out the facts, then you apply the law to the facts. The opinion, and Gary will correct me if I'm wrong, they don't go into the fact that he sold this home, that he abandoned this residence, that there are other people living there, and then apply the law. They ignore that. Is that correct, Gary?
That is correct. You don't know what facts was known by each of the writers until you get to the Greg Zeller opinion that was issued right before the Election Commission challenge. And it was used as evidence in his favor of arguing that he was an inhabitant and eligible to run for the U.S. Senate. But the opinion on its face stated that it was their view that he was a resident that it was only for voting registration purposes. It had nothing to do, it never addressed the qualifications of him as a senator. We can presume that Zeller knew those facts because they had been discussed so much in the media by that point, but he doesn't recite them in his opinion. He just picks up where the last Lindley Pearson opinion left off in 1982, that just simply bought into this proposition that once he was elected to office in 1976, he was eligible because he was a resident of the state at that time, and he could abandon his residence and not have any physical presence thereafter as long as he was serving in the U.S. Senate.
In perpetuity.
Well, as long as he, it was an open-ended opinion that he could legally register to vote at a home that he resided at when he went there. And it did, but as Paul mentioned, none of the opinions actually recited the fact that he abandoned that home in 1977.
But what about Lugar's wife in all of this and her ability to vote here? How is it that Lugar's standing to be able to and personally I believe he has standing to run for re-election. I think that Indiana Code 3-5-5-5 covers it. I think that he was totally silly for not utilizing the fact that he owns land here in Marion County, putting a house on it, making a point every year of throwing a party for the neighborhood association or something, because he has like a 5K race or something downtown every year, doing that just to show that he has contact with the people back here in Indiana, and none of this would have been brought up. It all would have been relevant.
And he does own my understanding is there is a farmhouse on it. He has said that the farmhouse that he and his wife resided in when they first got married has since been torn down, but there's another farmhouse on the property, and he said that it would not be. He said that isn't their residence, so it wouldn't be truthful to do it. And of course, that goes back to the argument that they were trying to throw up at Birch Bayh. They were saying, you don't live in this dumpy farmhouse anymore. You've got a nice house in Washington.
And so,
but it was a home. It qualified as a domicile where someone could inhabit it if they want, and and the Buys had always continuously maintained their intent to have a residence there. It was always under the possession and control of the Buys, so they would have never been able to have disqualified them under Indiana law from voting.
And that was a very, very bitter campaign in '74.
That was.
And I remember at the time, I was in college, and we were speculating that Buy would probably lose just because this is in Indiana and Lugar was so strong. But 1974, because of the backlash on Watergate, that was so significant that Birch Bayh was able to defeat Richard Lugar.
Well, it wasn't just Watergate, but there was also a huge scandal that the Star broke, a police scandal that the Star broke just days before the election in 1974, that the Napoleon Press broke. It was the first in an investigative series. It was like, I think, a week or two before the actual elections.
It had actually, it was an ongoing series.
But the first in the
there was a lot, it just, the news it was just a drip effect.
Yeah. But Dick Cheney won the Pulitzer for that.
That's correct.
But not only did they break it days before the election, not only did Birch Bayh win, he won by 70,000 plus votes, and Lugar, as sitting mayor of Indianapolis, lost Marion County in that election.
That's true.
One thing that hasn't really come up, and I keep waiting for it to come up, he's not only putting 3200 Highwoods Court down on his voter registration documents, but he's doing it at the DMV. The one I'd be even more concerned about, he's putting it on his federal tax returns, he's putting on his state tax returns.
His presidential campaign in 2006.
Exactly. And I would think there could be legal problems associated with that.
Well, and my client's investigation turned up the fact, too, that his wife Charlene had a very well publicized drunk driving arrest in Virginia in 2009, I believe, and she was convicted and had her license suspended. And when Greg Wright, my client, checked the BMV records here in Indiana, there was no record of that conviction being entered on her driver's record here. So her license was never suspended in Indiana, and Indiana has a compact agreement with Virginia to share that information.
Yes, and I can tell you from experience representing people in criminal courts here that a conviction from another state goes...
It holds up, right?
It holds up, but it's also communicated pretty quickly.
Yes, and that was in the news. You couldn't have missed it. And the position of the general counsel was it was never transmitted from Virginia to Indiana's BMV, and so it's not our problem. And they weren't going to correct it, even when Greg brought it to her attention, the fact that it wasn't. Not only that, but there was also she had been arrested a month after the DUI conviction for speeding through a school zone, going about 20 miles an hour over the speed limit on a school day, and that offense wasn't recorded against her Indiana driver's record either.
Okay, going back then to the whole question of, I guess one question that would really arise then is, what effect is this going to have on the primary? Because that's less than
a month-ish.
About a month. It's May 8th. What effect is this going to have on the campaign? The polls are showing that Lugar is 6 points ahead of...
6 points ahead. And I think it's so polling nowadays, it's hard to get good polls done.
Especially in the more rural parts of it.
Right.
And so many people switching to cell phones.
You can kind of look at the strategy of the campaign and find what's working, what's not working. The fact that they have not gotten off this residency issue means that it's playing. That it plays into the whole bigger sense that he's been in Washington too long, that he's out of touch with Hoosiers and Hoosier values. It really plays into that, and they keep hammering. And I think Lugar would like to talk about other issues, but he's not being able to.
I don't want to give Treasurer Murdoch's campaign, Treasurer Murdoch's campaign, too much credit. I don't think there's much of an organization there. Lots of it's being done by super PACs. I think if Lugar does lose, he loses the election rather than Murdoch wins the primary. Because if I was a Republican, running in a contested GOP primary statewide, I would not be sending out emails almost on a daily basis talking about how much I love being endorsed by Matthew Tolley, by the Indianapolis Star editorial board, and by other establishment figures.
Yeah.
You know, because not only, and this was before the Tea Party movement even began. You know, most Indiana Republicans are not big fans of Indianapolis. You know, Steve Goldsmith lost. You know, because he was like, "Oh, hey, I'm mayor of Indianapolis," and everyone was like, "Wait a second, we hate Indianapolis."
Well, there's
So-
an important point to bring up on that is that prior to Richard Lugar, no U.S. senator from Indiana had ever been elected to more than 3 terms.
That's right.
And he was the
This will be
first
the 6th
one to break that 3rd term jinx. And you know, he served 6. This would be 7 terms that he's seeking. So he, you know, from a historical standpoint, he's served well beyond the bounds of anyone. You know, 18 years was the most any other senator had previously served. You know, Birch Bayh and Vance Harkey being 2 examples.
Yeah, well, and the question becomes also when a person becomes of a certain age. I mean, we have very wise people who are very old who are able to do things, but there are also senators who have not been compos mentis. And I'm thinking of South Carolina's Senator
Strom
Thurmond, who probably didn't. Yes, and he was running on name alone. And
he was still producing babies, you know, at that age.
I don't know if that's going to be a gauge on whether someone should occupy the United States Senate. Then I think John Edwards certainly has established his credentials.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that.
he might be gaining on a prostitution ring conviction.
Well, see, you're racking up all sorts of things there. But I think that when I heard Senator Lugar speak at the law school, I thought he was a brilliant man because somebody asked him a question about like the Ivory Coast, and he was able to respond to the question specifically about the administration of that country and the past presidencies and how that affected the neighboring countries. And it's a brilliant man. I don't see that flicker in him now, but at the same time, I'm frankly scared of Murdoch because I look at his positions on things, and I think he's really too far right. I don't think he has a good sense of judgment.
You should look at the Democrat candidate, Joe Donnelly.
Oh,
he really is more of a Republican. He's the type of Democrat that could win in Indiana if the Democrat Party wasn't in shambles right now. But
they're both in shambles, but also the predecessor of this governor. I mean, the one before.
O'Bannon?
No.
Bye.
Evan. Yeah. All right. He was not a Democrat. He was a Republican.
A Republican crap.
Yeah, I mean, he was Republican crap. I mean, because he saw a chance to take that office in a state that's normally Republican and use his family name. Gentlemen, this has been fun today. It's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Hope you will again, Gary, Matt. I don't know. It's looking kind of slim.
you have my number.
Okay. Thanks very much, Paul. It's always fun. Thanks, folks, for watching us out there, whichever camera I'm looking at. Thank you for our audience today. Take care. We'll see you.